The story took place in Africa, in a place called Malawi. The region was hit by extreme weather every single year. First, 2 months of non-stop rain, then 10 months of brutal drought. Villagers worked the fields under the blazing sun, and one wrong move could lead to heat stroke and death. At first, William was just as carefree as the other village kids. Back then, the only time he got a break from farm work was during funerals, when he and his friends could run around and play. But when he was 9 at one of those funerals, he looked at his exhausted father and felt a sudden fear. What if his dad was the next one to collapse from the strain? That thought changed everything for William. He left the funeral early and went straight to the fields to help. His father, who had seen so much hardship, was deeply moved by his son's sudden maturity. That evening, his dad rode him to the market on his bicycle and bought him a brand new hoe. But his mother wasn't happy about it. She believed William should be in school, not working in the fields. William still remembered how his parents argued all night, and in the end, his father gave in. But no one could have guessed that his mother's insistence would one day change the entire village's future. The next morning, she took William to the local primary school to enroll him. When he put on his new uniform, the whole family broke into smiles for the first time in a long while. From then on, his father stopped sending him to the fields, and his mother pushed him to study hard. William knew how much the school fees cost, but he never understood why he needed an education in a village where everyone lived off the land. Plus, the textbooks were boring, so he often skipped class and wandered around. One day, while wandering, he ended up at the dump near the school. It was full of all kinds of discarded junk, most of which he recognized, except for one iron machine with pipes attached. He went back and asked his teacher about it, and the teacher told him it was an electric water pump. It could draw groundwater, but only if it had power. William immediately thought of using it to irrigate the crops, but the teacher just laughed and said it was crazy. There wasn't even a single power pole in the whole village. Most people would have given up, but William found his direction instead. He realized that if he wanted to use the pump, he had to figure out how to generate electricity first. His teacher said they wouldn't learn about electricity until the upper grades, but William couldn't wait that long. To understand how circuits worked, he set his sights on the family radio, his father's prized possession, which no one was allowed to touch. William was clever. He climbed onto the roof, pretending to fix the tiles, while secretly watching his father's movements. Once his dad was far enough away, he jumped down, took the radio apart completely. With his sharp memory, he studied every part inside, then put it all back together, and it still worked just fine. After learning the basics of circuits, he started going to the dump every day to look for old batteries. He finally found one that still held some charge, and he eagerly hooked it up to the pump, but nothing happened. Stuck and unable to find the problem, he decided to slow down and follow his school lessons more carefully. But his steady school life didn't last long before a bigger crisis hit. A group of foreign company workers came to the village and insisted on cutting down the entire forest. The chief called a meeting, and William's father knew the truth. The forest was the village's natural shield. Without it, the rainy season would bring floods, the dry season would get even worse. Crops would fail, and famine would sweep through. But one man's voice didn't carry far enough, and in the end, the villagers agreed to the deal, and the whole forest was cleared. Watching the trees fall one by one, William knew time was running out. From that point on, he stopped following the usual class schedule and spent all his free time in the school library, teaching himself upper-level electricity and physics. His friends made fun of him, saying a village kid trying to master technology from a few books was just a pipe dream. At first, William didn't know what to say, and he started to doubt himself. Then one day, all the radios in the village ran out of battery power. No one had money to buy new batteries, and everyone was upset. William had a flash of insight, remembering something he'd read about connecting batteries in series. He collected all the dead batteries, and with everyone watching in confusion, hooked them up end to end. It was his very first science experiment, and it worked. When the radio crackled back to life, his friends cheered. William truly understood for the first time, book knowledge could actually make a real difference. After that, William walked to school with a lighter step. But new trouble was right around the corner. The principal came into class and told half the students they had to pay their overdue fees by the deadline, or they'd be expelled. William was on that list. Back home, his father told him the truth. They had sacrificed to send him to school because the logging company had promised that anyone with a primary school diploma could get a job there. But now the forest was gone. The company had packed up and left, and the family simply couldn't afford the fees anymore. William understood their situation, but he wasn't ready to give up on his irrigation project. He tried to explain his progress to his father, but his dad just saw it as wishful thinking and refused to believe him. After that, his mother stopped mentioning school, and his father took him to work in the fields every day. William thought his dream of irrigation was over for good, but one night he stumbled upon something shocking. His teacher secretly seeing his underage sister, which was strictly forbidden in their community. William was furious, and out of spite, he decided to mess with the teacher's bicycle, which the man always rode around with such pride. The next day, he and a friend went to the bike and noticed it had a headlight. Since the light needed power, he followed the wires and found a spinning device near the wheel. He had his friend pedal, and when the light turned on, he was amazed. His curiosity took over, and he went to ask the teacher what that device was and whether it could charge a battery, but the teacher ignored him because of the unpaid tuition. So William threatened to expose the secret relationship with his sister, and the teacher reluctantly told him it was an alternator, and with an inverter, it could charge a battery, though even the teacher didn't really understand inverters. William didn't stop there. He got the teacher to help him sneak into the library past the librarian so he could do more research. He originally only wanted to understand inverters, but a book on wind power opened up a whole new idea for him. He realized that their land had wind all year round. Wind was an endless energy source. The rainy season came right on schedule, and a massive flood destroyed the farmland. Both the crops and the stored seeds were ruined. At first, the villagers held out hope that they could replant when the dry season arrived. But once the dry season hit, the sun beat down so hard that even the most drought-resistant corn withered away. Famine consumed the entire village. Some people tried to bring water to their fields in the scorching heat, but they collapsed from heat stroke and died. Others went out at night searching for food and were never seen again. William raced against time to finish his wind-powered plan, while the adults scrambled for any way to survive. His father believed the only hope was to ask the government for emergency food aid. He even suggested to the chief that they make their plea directly to the president when he came through town to campaign for votes. Soon after, the president's convoy arrived, and the villagers welcomed them with singing and dancing. The chief followed the plan and gave a speech, starting with flattery before explaining the village's disaster and asking for aid. But the president turned hostile on the spot. He had his guards drag the chief behind the stage and beat him, then fired a warning shot and drove off. Later, William's father learned the truth. The national grain reserves had already been sold off to buy weapons, and asking publicly for food aid was simply out of the question. That path was closed off for good. Meanwhile, William finally made a breakthrough. He built a simple inverter. Now all he needed was to borrow the teacher's alternator to run the final test. That night, he excitedly told his father the news, but instead of being happy, his father strictly forbade him from going any further. That same night, a heavy tension hung over the whole village. People lit bonfires and kept watch at the village entrance all night to guard against food thieves. At dawn, everyone rushed into the fields to harvest the unripe corn before it was too late. William's family did better than most, but it still wasn't nearly enough to last through the long dry season. To trade for food, his father tore the iron sheets off their roof and took them to the market. But in just a few days, grain prices had shot up 5 times. Despair settled over every household. Then the radio announced an official statement denying any famine in the region, and if there was no disaster, no relief would come. Left with no choice, his father decided to join a protest march to the government office. Before he left, he warned his family to stay home and not go out. At first, William followed his father's orders, but after thinking it over, he decided to go to the school anyway to borrow the generator. He hid near the wall to avoid the principal and slipped into the classroom before class started. But instead of the teacher, the principal walked in. Not only did William fail to get the equipment, but the principal also publicly scolded him as a knowledge thief and expelled him on the spot, banning him from ever stepping on school grounds again. William walked home in defeat, but what he saw along the way shook him. Crowds were ransacking food supplies in the streets, and once kind villagers had lost all reason over a single meal. William finally understood why his father had warned him, but it was too late. Someone had broken into their home and looted the grain storehouse. His mother and sister fought back, but they couldn't save the food. That night, the family sat around a single small bag of grain, silent. William felt guilty and wanted to apologize, but his father wouldn't even look at him. After a long pause, his father said quietly, "I'm begging you, stop your experiments." William swallowed the words he wanted to say. Later, his father shared what he had learned from past famines and told the family to follow his lead. At first, William obeyed, but soon he realized these were just passive survival tactics, mixing leaves into cornmeal and limiting everyone to 1 meal a day. William knew that wasn't a sustainable solution. Late one night, while his parents were asleep, he found his sister and begged her to help him get the generator. Seeing how determined he was, she finally agreed. 3 days later, something happened that William would regret for the rest of his life. His sister left without a word, leaving only a letter and the generator she had traded her future for. The family searched everywhere for her, but found nothing. Grieving as he was, William knew the only way to honor her sacrifice was to finish the irrigation system. He stopped fearing the principal's ban and asked his mother to go with him to the school to talk things through. At first, the principal refused, but his mother warned him that if William wasn't allowed back, she would report the teacher for what he did to her daughter. In the end, William got his inverter and books back from the library. The full device was too complex for him to build alone, so he reached out to his old friends for help. They had seen him connect batteries before, but they still didn't believe wind power could actually pump water. To prove it, William built a small model first, no fan blades, so he heated and flattened plastic pipes instead, no drive shaft, so he even took apart his beloved radio to use its parts. When the wind turned the blades and the radio connected to the inverter started playing, everyone was convinced, and they threw themselves into building the full machine. William and his friends scavenged the dump for parts, but they were still missing some key components. That's when he started eyeing his father's bicycle, the most valuable thing the family owned. William couldn't bring himself to ask. As the famine got worse, more villagers died, and even the stray dogs by the roadside starved to death. William knew he couldn't wait any longer. He gathered his courage and went to find his father in the field. First, he hooked up a small windmill to a battery for a demo. When the blades spun, the radio turned on. His father looked amazed. So William explained his full plan for wind-powered irrigation and then admitted he needed to take the bicycle apart for parts. His father exploded with rage, knocked the windmill over, and yelled at William in a fury. He had already figured out why his daughter had left, and between losing her and the crushing weight of the famine, he just lost it. From that day on, his father could barely look at him, and William didn't dare bring up the bicycle again. But his mother found out about it and got into another fierce argument with his father. In the end, she convinced him, and his father came to William and offered to help. William was stunned and overjoyed. His father admitted he wasn't sure the contraption would work, but things were already so bad that even failure wouldn't make them worse off. His father brought out his beloved bicycle, and when the villagers heard about it, they all came to help. For a community on the edge, that windmill became their last shred of hope. Piece by piece, they built it, and when it was finally done, everyone stared at the pile of junk they had turned into a machine, nervous, uncertain if it could actually pull water from the ground. But when the breeze turned the big blades and water burst from the pipes, cheers and tears mixed together. Water flowed into the cracked earth and brought the village back to life. They had made it through the deadly famine. That flowing water didn't just change the land, it changed everyone's mindset. After everything, William's father became the biggest believer in education in the village. With his family's support, William left the remote village behind and used knowledge to rewrite his own future. A lot of people call this a simple story of knowledge changing fate, but the real meaning goes much deeper. What made William special wasn't his natural talent. It was his refusal to give up, even when everything was against him. Mockery, harsh conditions, and even family misunderstanding couldn't stop him from pushing forward. He didn't wait for rescue or complain about how unfair life was. He just held on to his belief and turned one impossible thing after another into reality. Today, we live in comfort and security. We often see textbooks as boring and treat school as a burden. We have every advantage, yet we rarely appreciate it. But the education we take for granted is something people in remote places can only dream of. That windmill didn't just spin blades, it spun a young man's courage to fight against despair. Knowledge isn't just a score on a test, it's the strength that holds us up when we hit rock bottom. It won't stop the storms from coming, but it teaches us how to face them and find a way through. On the road of life, everyone faces their own dry season. Some give up, some complain. But others, like William, create their own hope through persistence and ingenuity. His true story tells us, hardship may limit your circumstances, but it doesn't have to limit your vision. The things you learn and the struggles you survive will eventually carry you out of the mud and toward a better future.